The morning sun rose over the first human settlement, casting golden light on a world still young, innocent, and untouched, where Adam and Eve's children learned the fragile balance between love and envy. Cain, the elder son, tilled the soil, sweat dripping from his brow, his heart heavy with unspoken rivalry, a tension invisible to the world but burning fiercely within his mind. Abel, the younger, tended flocks, his face radiant with simple joy, unaware of the storm brewing in his brother's soul, as innocence clashed silently with resentment under heaven's gaze. The brothers prepared their offerings to God, each seeking approval and favor, unaware that the act of devotion would soon ignite a chain of tragedy and mark history forever. Abel offered the firstborn of his flock, tender and pure, while Cain presented the fruit of the earth, carefully cultivated yet lacking the fervent devotion his brother's sacrifice displayed. God's gaze fell upon Abel and his offering, acceptance glowing like sunlight on the pasture, while Cain's heart twisted, shadows of jealousy creeping into the corners of his mind. Cain's eyes burned with frustration, his hands trembling as he tried to hide the storm within, a tempest of envy that refused to be quelled by reason or restraint. "You will be accepted too," God whispered, his voice calm, measured, yet carrying a weight that Cain could not yet comprehend, a warning shrouded in mercy and hope. But Cain's heart heard only rejection, the tender words of God distorted into accusation, the green-eyed serpent of envy whispering vengeance, planting seeds of destruction in fertile soil. The next day, Cain lured Abel into the field, ostensibly for conversation, yet the air between them carried tension, thick and suffocating, foretelling a calamity that would shake all humanity. Words passed, neutral at first, then sharp, stinging like hidden thorns, until silence fell, a silence heavier than any words, pregnant with the danger of decisions born from unchecked anger. Cain struck, first with a shove, then a fist, until Abel fell, blood mingling with the soil, the earth drinking in the first murder, the first innocent life spilled by human hands. Shock seized Cain's heart, the weight of his action crashing down like a relentless wave, guilt and panic intertwining, leaving him breathless, trembling in the shadow of the unthinkable. Abel lay still, eyes wide, the life gone from them, yet the memory of joy remained, haunting Cain like a ghost that would never leave, ever whispering of his crime. The ground seemed to mourn with Abel, silent witness to humanity's first sin of fratricide, each grain of soil heavy with sorrow and the loss of innocence from the world itself. God's voice came, thunderous yet sorrowful, asking Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" A question that pierced the soul, demanding truth, justice, and recognition of the enormity of human choice. Cain faltered, trembling, his lips forming a lie. "Am I my brother's keeper?" Words empty of remorse, echoing through the fields, yet God's presence felt every hidden thought, every flicker of deceit. Anger, sorrow, and judgment intertwined as God condemned Cain, not merely for the act, but for the heart that nurtured murder, the envy that corrupted the first human bond. "Cursed are you from the ground," God declared, "which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood. You shall wander restless, alienated, and hunted by consequence, never finding lasting peace again." Cain's face contorted with despair, tears streaking dirt, realizing the life he had known was forever shattered, family trust broken, a life banished into isolation, far from the home he once cherished. Fear gripped him as God marked him for protection, a paradox of mercy within judgment, a symbol that even the guilty cannot escape divine attention, though punishment shapes destiny irrevocably. Exile was complete. Cain walked eastward, leaving behind familiar hills, laughter, and the presence of family, venturing into unknown lands where survival required ingenuity, endurance, and the fortitude of a heart scarred. Loneliness enveloped him like a shadow constant, reminding him of every choice, every hidden motive, each day a reflection of his fall, each night echoing the first murder in haunting silence. Yet life pressed forward, necessity demanding companionship, sustenance, and purpose, raising the ancient question haunting Cain. in a sparse human world, who could he possibly marry to continue existence? Stories whispered through generations, suggesting Adam and Eve bore daughters alongside sons, women whose lives remained hidden, unseen, their identities lost to time, yet essential to survival and the continuation of humanity. Perhaps one of these forgotten daughters became Cain's wife, a figure shrouded in mystery, her name unknown, yet her existence pivotal, representing both love and moral ambiguity in a nascent world. The tension of divine command and human survival clashed within Cain, a dilemma repeated throughout history, as early generations faced impossible choices under the weight of mortality and necessity. Exile demanded resilience, confronting a young man with solitude, reflection, and the consequences of envy made flesh, shaping character through suffering, humility, and the eternal question of redemption. Cain's journey across barren lands was fraught with fear and opportunity, the first footprints of civilization tracing the path of sin, judgment, and the fragile hope of human endurance. Even as he wandered, God's presence lingered, a mixture of chastisement and guidance, ensuring accountability while allowing life to proceed, a balance impossible for Cain to fully comprehend or escape. The story of Cain and Abel remains the first mirror to humanity, reflecting jealousy, choice, consequence, and the profound responsibility humans bear toward one another in life, love, and moral decision. In every shadowed valley Cain crossed, the lesson echoed. Unchecked envy destroys, mercy can temper judgment, and even banishment offers a path to reflection, growth, and perhaps eventual reconciliation with the divine. The mystery of Cain's wife and the forgotten daughters continues, a haunting question for generations. How did humanity survive morally, spiritually, and socially after the first act of fratricide in history? Even today, Cain's journey teaches vigilance over the heart, the perils of jealousy, and the eternal human challenge to care for one another, to choose love over resentment, and to honor life itself. Thus, the first murder became more than a crime. It became a lesson etched into human consciousness, warning, shaping, and questioning the delicate balance between divine command, human choice, and survival's harsh reality. The Garden of Eden, once pristine, now held the echoes of human choices, a world carrying both innocence and sorrow, where Adam and Eve's children grew beyond the shadows of their famous siblings. Among them were daughters, often overlooked, living quietly, yet observing the turbulence around Cain and Abel, their lives hidden from history, silent witnesses to the first acts of sin and survival. These daughters walked in the garden's fringes, gentle yet vigilant, learning to navigate a world shaped by human emotion, divine instruction, and the lingering consequences of transgression and mercy. They played among budding trees and streams, laughter soft and fleeting, a fragile shield against the knowledge of death, envy, and exile that shadowed their brothers' every step in life. Theirs were lessons learned early. The garden taught careful observation, patience, and understanding, skills essential for survival, when the first murder had shattered innocence, leaving fear and uncertainty in every corner. They saw Cain's departure, a figure of guilt and sorrow walking eastward into exile, and silently wondered who would continue humanity's fragile lineage when sons and daughters seemed so few. Their presence was quiet yet crucial, ensuring life's continuity, bridging the gap between divine command and the harsh reality of human survival, the daughters' existence forming the backbone of humanity's earliest generations. No scripture names them, yet imagination allows us to hear their voices, soft but insistent, carrying wisdom, compassion, and quiet strength, their hearts resilient amidst sorrow, their footsteps shaping untold stories. The daughters learned from Eve, absorbing the lessons of choice, consequence, and responsibility, realizing that life beyond the garden required moral fortitude, courage, and the ability to endure hardships without complaint. They watched their brothers wrestle with envy, anger, and despair, and quietly reflected, understanding that human emotion could be both destructive and formative, shaping destinies in unforeseen and eternal ways. Cain's departure left questions unspoken. Where would companions come from? How would humanity expand? The daughters, though overlooked, carried hope, capable of nurturing life when others faltered or failed in faith. Living alongside Adam, Eve, and other siblings, they contributed silently, cultivating gardens, tending flocks, and learning skills essential for survival, ensuring humanity persisted despite tragedy, violence, and exile marking early generations. The first family's history was not only about sons. Daughters preserved balance, teaching the art of compassion, resilience, and discreet wisdom, often invisible yet pivotal to survival in a world newly marred by sin. They observed Abel's joy, his connection with God, understanding devotion's power and fragility, learning that hearts open to divine instruction could flourish, while envy and neglect bred disaster, as Cain's life illustrated. In these hidden lives, the daughters became guardians of memory, preserving stories, knowledge, and lessons unrecorded, ensuring the human race retained moral and practical understanding for generations yet unborn. They bore witness to conversations between parents and sons, noting anger, disappointment, and hope, understanding that human relationships required care, forgiveness, and attentive hearts, lessons as vital as food and shelter. The daughters' quiet strength counterbalanced chaos, embodying virtues often forgotten: restraint, empathy, and observation, proving that influence does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sustaining life and teaching survival through silence. Even as Cain became a wanderer, their presence offered continuity, a quiet reassurance that humanity's growth would not falter entirely. That hope existed beyond one brother's failure, one family's tragedy. Speculation suggests some daughters married brothers, weaving human bonds necessary for survival, navigating complex morality under divine instruction, their choices shaping civilization's earliest foundations and challenging early humans' understanding of right and wrong. Their lives were a blend of simplicity and moral complexity, balancing innocence and awareness, survival and obedience, illustrating that even in shadow, humans could embody both virtue and necessity, hope and resilience. While Cain faced judgment, exile, and fear, these daughters remained steady observers, quietly shaping the next generation, embodying patience, endurance, and foresight, the unseen pillars upon which human continuity depended. Their existence challenges assumptions. History often overlooks those who act quietly, yet essential contributions can reside in silence, patience, and observation, especially when survival and morality intertwine in nascent civilizations. Theirs was an emotional journey, witnessing loss and danger while nurturing growth, facing the consequences of others' choices, yet finding ways to continue life, preserve knowledge, and uphold divine principles in small actions. Though unnamed, their stories resonate, teaching viewers the power of unnoticed lives, the importance of moral courage, and the quiet impact individuals can have, shaping history without recognition or fanfare. The daughters of Adam and Eve also remind humanity that survival often requires hidden wisdom, moral flexibility, and courage, and that even without attention, one can influence outcomes in profound, lasting ways. The garden, once bright and serene, became a classroom of sorrow and resilience, where daughters learned the subtle art of balancing obedience to God with practical necessities in a world filled with uncertainty. They witnessed early violence, the burden of exile, and sibling rivalry, yet cultivated harmony where possible, creating spaces of learning, growth, and quiet care, proving humanity's moral potential alongside its destructive tendencies. Though Scripture does not detail them, imagination allows us to explore their emotional landscape, filled with empathy, resilience, and foresight, carrying humanity forward when others failed, unseen yet essential in the unfolding story. Their quiet work included preparing food, gathering resources, and supporting siblings, a silent labor that enabled survival, underscoring the principle that significant contributions need not always be public to be vital. These daughters also exemplified hope, embodying human endurance, patience, and moral reflection, reminding viewers that overlooked individuals can carry history, preserve civilization, and maintain moral continuity through trials and tragedies. By preserving life and knowledge, they became bridges between generations, allowing humanity to continue despite early failures, creating opportunities for redemption, growth, and eventual reconciliation with divine purpose and moral understanding. Ultimately, the forgotten daughters teach that history remembers more than the famous, that survival depends on quiet strength, and that human continuity often relies on lives lived in patience, reflection, and moral courage. Even today, viewers can learn from them. Not every hero is celebrated, not every contribution is recorded. Yet the unseen often carries the heaviest, most enduring influence upon humanity's path and destiny. Cain walked alone under a crimson sunset, exile pressing upon him, heart heavy with guilt, fear, and longing. The wind whispered through barren fields, carrying questions no answer could fully satisfy. Where could he find a companion in a world so small, yet teeming with divine expectation, where survival demanded continuation, and choices weighed heavier than human hearts were prepared to bear? The Bible offers a single perplexing line. Cain knew his wife, yet her name, origin, and story remain hidden, a mystery inviting both speculation and moral reflection for centuries. Some suggested she was a sister, born alongside Cain, unknown to history, quietly surviving, shaped by a garden now tainted with sorrow, grief, and humanity's first act of violence. Others theorized she was a niece, descendant of Abel's unborn line or another forgotten sibling, a figure simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary, crucial to survival, yet shrouded in uncertainty and moral tension. A third theory whispers of a distant relative, a family line Adam and Eve, cultivated quietly, unseen, ensuring humanity's growth, despite divine command and the chaos unleashed by Cain's choices. The question weighed heavily on Cain. How could he honor God's instruction while satisfying the biological necessity of life, preserving lineage and securing a human future amidst moral ambiguity? Each step eastward reminded him of Abel, the stolen life, the bloodied soil, and God's eyes upon him, weighing guilt and survival in equal, unrelenting measure, shaping his restless path. He imagined meeting his wife, a figure both familiar and strange, raised among forgotten siblings, carrying innocence untainted by his crime, yet destined to face humanity's moral challenges alongside him. Their first conversation might have been cautious, tentative, each word measured, aware of consequences, the weight of exile pressing like chains upon their hearts, binding their destiny with fear and hope alike. Cain's wife, though unnamed, became a symbol of resilience, courage, and necessity, a reminder that humanity could survive even when divine and human laws seemed to conflict irreparably. The tension between obedience and survival gnawed at them, each choice a moral tightrope, walking a path where every action could bear both salvation and judgment in a world just beginning. Together, they built a life simple yet fraught with complexity, cultivating land, learning survival, and quietly nurturing humanity's fragile continuation, a partnership shadowed by exile, guilt, and the enigmatic hand of divine purpose. God's question still echoed, "Am I my brother's keeper?" A moral reminder that even in love and survival, responsibility toward others remained essential, shaping humanity's first marriage into a lesson of conscience. Cain's wife likely shared silent burdens, witnessing exile's consequences, carrying knowledge of the first murder, and balancing empathy with the need to ensure lineage and life continued despite unspoken fears. Daily life demanded practicality, planting crops, tending animals, securing shelter, preserving food, all amidst the moral weight of their union, reflecting the delicate balance between necessity, conscience, and divine expectation. The moral tension remained. Was this union acceptable under divine eyes or merely tolerated for survival? Cain's wife embodied the paradox of obedience, practicality, and human instinct in nascent civilization. Together they produced offspring, continuing the human story. Yet questions lingered. Were these children extensions of survival or reminders of moral compromise, a dual legacy of love, guilt, and divine observation? The mystery amplifies Cain's internal struggle. The first murderer, now husband, learning love and partnership amidst unending reflection upon his crime, with a wife whose existence enabled both redemption and moral ambiguity. History left no record of her name, yet her impact was profound. Humanity persisted, morality endured, and divine purposes continued, showing that hidden figures often shape the world far more than celebrated ones. The unknown daughter, sister, or niece transformed from shadow to essential, illustrating the quiet power of women in preserving humanity, shaping morality, and ensuring continuity in the earliest and most turbulent generations. Speculation about her identity sparks reflection. How often do unseen individuals, acting quietly under immense pressure, influence history, morality, and the human story in ways future generations cannot fully perceive? Cain's wife represents that unseen influence, essential, enduring, and mysterious, teaching that moral courage, resilience, and quiet dedication often outlive notoriety, shaping civilizations and human destiny in ways obscured from view. Their life together illustrates the human struggle to reconcile past sins with present necessity, balancing conscience, survival, and the unrecorded contributions that ensure humanity endures beyond tragedy and judgment. Her existence resolves practical challenges of early civilization, companionship, reproduction, and moral navigation, showing that human creativity, patience, and courage can uphold life even when divine and human laws intersect ambiguously. The narrative invites reflection on ethics, survival, and the moral dilemmas inherent in humanity's earliest stories, emphasizing the enduring tension between obedience, necessity, and resilience in life's most critical moments. Ultimately, the mystery of Cain's wife teaches timeless lessons. Unseen individuals shape history. Morality often exists amidst complexity, and survival demands courage, reflection, and partnership, even when choices remain morally ambiguous. Even today, viewers are reminded that history is not only written by the visible, the celebrated, or the famous, but also by those whose lives quietly sustain continuity, morality, and human endurance. Thus, Cain's wife remains a symbol, a moral and historical enigma, illustrating the delicate balance between survival, divine command, and the courage to continue humanity despite shadowed circumstances and unanswered questions. Cain wandered eastward, the land stretching barren and unfamiliar, his heart burdened by guilt, exile, and the heavy weight of Abel's blood. Each step a reminder of irreversible consequences. He discovered fertile lands along rivers, soil dark and rich, where he could cultivate crops, build shelter, and carve a semblance of home, a fragile attempt to rebuild existence alone. Nightfall brought loneliness, stars shining coldly above, reflecting Cain's inner turmoil, fear, and longing for connection, reminding him that life after fratricide required courage, reflection, and endurance beyond imagination. Daily toil occupied his hands, yet his mind wandered to companionship, to shared laughter, to someone who might see him beyond his sin, a partner to navigate exile's harsh reality. He recalled whispers of forgotten daughters, shadows of Adam and Eve's lineage, their quiet presence offering hope that humanity could continue, even when moral choices weighed heavily on one man. Cain imagined meeting a woman who understood his burden, eyes reflecting empathy, heart capable of both forgiveness and resilience, a bond forged in necessity, hardship, and shared survival's quiet demands. Together they tilled the soil, gathered water, and built structures, the rhythm of labor creating space for reflection, healing, and the subtle beginnings of human civilization from chaos and exile. Their conversations were cautious, tentative, each word measured, trust fragile, fear of judgment present, yet a desire for companionship pressing forward, shaping a relationship born of circumstance and divine allowance. Evenings brought reflection, silent acknowledgement of Abel's loss, of God's ongoing presence, and of the moral tension between survival and guilt. Each day a lesson in resilience, endurance, and emotional reckoning. Cain's mind wrestled with remorse, imagining Abel's face, the family left behind, and the consequences of his anger. Yet survival demanded action, adaptation, and the forging of new bonds despite inner torment. He shared knowledge of farming, protection, and survival with his companion, teaching lessons learned through toil and reflection, creating a household built on necessity, understanding, and quiet moral reflection. Children arrived, the firstborn of exile, innocent and unaware of the past, yet their presence brought both joy and fear, illuminating the delicate balance between continuation and memory of sin. The household became a microcosm of human civilization, teaching survival, moral guidance, and responsibility, where love intertwined with necessity, and daily life offered lessons beyond the reach of scripture or witness. Cain's wife, unnamed yet pivotal, demonstrated resilience, nurturing the household, guiding children, and maintaining harmony, a quiet force ensuring that life persisted, morality endured, and family continued despite tragedy. Together they developed routines, marking days by labor, growth, and reflection, transforming barren land into a garden of survival. Civilization's first fragile foothold carved from guilt, exile, and resilience. The psychological weight on Cain was immense, confronting isolation, moral failure, and the challenge of raising a family while seeking redemption, reconciliation, and purpose amidst shadows of past violence. He wrestled with fear of divine judgment, teaching children obedience, responsibility, and moral discernment, striving to prevent them from repeating mistakes, ensuring that legacy included both survival and ethical awareness. Moments of joy existed, laughter of children, shared meals, quiet nights, and the beauty of cultivated land, reminding Cain that life could continue even for the guilty, and hope could still flourish. Yet the past lingered, Abel's death an unshakable memory, guiding conscience, shaping choices, reminding Cain that even in exile, moral accountability and reflection were necessary for personal and familial growth. Their household became a foundation, a model for early human communities, illustrating that civilization required courage, moral balance, and emotional endurance, showing that survival and redemption often coexist in complex harmony. Cain observed seasons, tracked animals, and recorded knowledge, passing lessons to children, teaching early ethics, agriculture, and family bonds, preparing future generations for a world shaped by both divine oversight and human flaw. Love in exile demanded patience, empathy, and shared responsibility, requiring both partners to navigate fear, guilt, and societal necessity, balancing emotional needs with practical demands for survival and civilization's continuity. Each child's growth brought pride, anxiety, and moral reflection, shaping Cain's understanding of legacy, responsibility, and the consequences of early human actions, illustrating lessons in resilience, morality, and family survival. Despite isolation, the household forged connections with distant relatives, perhaps forgotten daughters, ensuring humanity's continuity while negotiating divine guidance, moral tension, and the challenge of ethical survival in early generations. Cain learned humility, patience, and emotional fortitude, realizing that life after sin required reflection, resilience, and the quiet strength to nurture others while carrying the burden of irreversible choices. The psychological landscape was complex, a blend of guilt, hope, fear, and love, teaching that human experience is multifaceted and emotional growth emerges from both hardship and the pursuit of continuity. He reflected on divine oversight, wondering how justice and mercy intertwined, shaping his understanding of God's presence, accountability, and the role of human effort in navigating moral and survival challenges. The couple's story illustrates the delicate balance between morality and necessity, emphasizing that ethical decisions in early civilization often required courage, adaptability, and the resilience to continue despite personal guilt or societal complexity. Cain's journey exemplifies human struggle, balancing regret with hope, isolation with companionship, moral responsibility with survival, showing that even flawed individuals can create life, civilization, and moral legacy in the harshest circumstances. Their home became a sanctuary of reflection, learning, and continuity, symbolizing humanity's ability to endure tragedy, reconcile guilt, and build civilization through love, patience, and shared responsibility despite moral shadows. Thus, Cain's journey after fratricide reminds us that life, love, and civilization often arise from hardship, guided by moral reflection, emotional resilience, and the quiet power of unseen yet essential partnerships. Even today, his story teaches that redemption, survival, and human growth require patience, courage, and steadfastness, demonstrating that even in exile and moral complexity, humans can build life, family, and enduring legacy. The daughters of Adam and Eve lived quietly, shadows among their brothers, observing the world with eyes wide to sorrow, fear, and curiosity, learning the weight of human emotion and consequence. Their lives were hidden, isolated, yet crucial, witnessing first acts of violence, learning early lessons about survival, morality, and the delicate balance between obedience to God and human necessity. They watched Abel tend his flocks, radiant with innocence, and Cain toil in the fields, tension between them growing, a silent storm shaping the moral landscape of humanity's earliest generations. The garden, once vibrant and serene, became a place of observation, learning, and reflection, where every movement of siblings carried significance, teaching lessons in morality, empathy, and the consequences of unchecked emotion. They witnessed Cain's jealousy grow, saw Abel's favor with God, and understood that human hearts, even among family, could harbor dangerous seeds, teaching caution, discernment, and moral awareness from the shadows. These daughters learned early to navigate tension, to step lightly through conversations, and to mediate disputes when possible, embodying wisdom, empathy, and foresight crucial to the survival of human civilization. When Abel fell, blood staining the soil, horror gripped them. Yet their understanding deepened, comprehending the reality of death, consequence, and the emotional gravity of choices made in anger and envy. The sight of Cain's guilt-stricken face haunted them, shaping their empathy and teaching that remorse is a complex human emotion, often intertwined with fear, survival instinct, and moral awakening in early life. They imagined what it meant to live under divine scrutiny, learning that every action carried weight, every choice influenced destiny, and that obedience required discernment, courage, and personal responsibility beyond youthful understanding. Daily life demanded resilience, gathering food, tending flocks, and supporting family while bearing emotional scars of witnessing violence, exile, and moral conflict, cultivating strength that would later preserve humanity across generations. Their quiet labor became moral education, teaching them balance between work, observation, and emotional reflection, ensuring they understood the fragility of life, importance of compassion, and consequences of envy and violence. They saw Cain depart, exile marking him, leaving questions of survival, companionship, and human continuation, teaching daughters the responsibility they held to preserve family, knowledge, and humanity in uncertain, morally complex times. They wondered about Cain's future, who would accompany him, and whether survival required morally complex decisions, recognizing that human continuity often depended on actions outside strict moral clarity or divine instruction. Their hidden perspective cultivated foresight, caution, and moral reflection, understanding that observation was powerful, that knowledge preserved silently could shape the future, and that patience often outweighed impulsive action in ensuring life endured. They learned that fear could teach, but resilience protected, balancing emotional responses with practical survival, cultivating an inner strength that would carry humanity beyond its earliest tragedies into fragile continuity. Though unseen, their roles were pivotal, ensuring family knowledge persisted, Moral guidance remained, and early human survival was possible despite exile, murder, and the ethical dilemmas confronting the first generation of humanity. They bore witness to quiet acts of love and labor, learning that influence often resides in the unseen, and that survival requires courage, patience, and the subtle cultivation of knowledge across generations. Their experiences shaped understanding of human nature, envy, guilt, compassion, and responsibility, instilling lessons essential for moral development, survival, and the guidance of future generations in a fragile and morally complex world. Observing their parents, Adam and Eve, they learned the importance of teaching, patience, and reflection, understanding that moral responsibility extends beyond immediate action, encompassing foresight, guidance, and the nurturing of family stability. The daughter's hidden perspective allowed insight into early civilization, understanding that morality, survival, and societal continuity depended on careful observation, emotional intelligence, and the courage to act when necessary, even without recognition. They internalized lessons of balance, when to intervene, when to observe, and how to cultivate life, knowledge, and morality without drawing attention, proving that quiet influence can shape history as powerfully as action. Their lives reflect the paradox of visibility, unseen yet essential, forgotten by Scripture yet remembered in purpose, carrying humanity forward through moral reflection, emotional resilience, and practical contributions to survival and continuity. The first acts of violence taught them discernment, empathy, and responsibility, highlighting the consequences of envy, the necessity of reflection, and the enduring importance of preserving both life and moral guidance for future generations. Through observation, they developed foresight, patience, and adaptability, learning that survival was not only physical, but moral and emotional, requiring understanding of human nature, divine expectations, and practical necessities for civilization's foundation. They maintained quiet emotional strength, serving as moral anchors, guiding younger siblings, preserving knowledge, and ensuring continuity, illustrating that sometimes the most powerful contributions are made in patience, reflection, and unseen labor. Even in isolation, their lives embodied hope, resilience, and moral clarity, teaching that the preservation of humanity often depends on quiet figures who observe, reflect, and act when necessary to ensure survival and guidance. The daughter's perspective emphasizes emotional intelligence, understanding fear, guilt, love, and responsibility, demonstrating that morality is learned through observation, reflection, and resilience, forming the ethical foundation for early human civilization. Their lives were shaped by tragedy and survival, yet they cultivated hope, emotional depth, and moral awareness, showing that unseen individuals often carry civilization forward through wisdom, patience, and steadfast courage under adversity. They remind us that history often overlooks essential figures, yet the continuity of humanity depends on those who observe, preserve knowledge, and navigate moral and emotional challenges quietly but decisively. Ultimately, the forgotten daughters teach timeless lessons. Moral reflection, emotional resilience, and quiet courage are as critical as action, ensuring survival, continuity, and the preservation of humanity even in the shadows of tragedy. Through their eyes, viewers see that fear can coexist with strength, sorrow with hope, and observation with action, demonstrating that unseen contributions often shape destiny, morality, and survival in profound ways. Humanity's survival rested on difficult choices, balancing moral understanding with necessity. As early generations faced the challenge of continuity in a world with few humans, moral ambiguity, and divine oversight, Cain and his descendants confronted choices that seemed forbidden yet necessary. Intermarriage among siblings and cousins, ensuring life persisted, while divine command and ethical reflection created tension in every decision. Fear of divine judgment lingered, shaping decisions, teaching early humans that survival required careful consideration, resilience, and a willingness to navigate moral complexity while honoring both life and God's instruction. Some unions were born of necessity, children of the first family marrying to preserve lineage, creating ethical dilemmas that questioned the boundaries of obedience, love, and practical survival in fledgling civilization. The daughters of Adam and Eve played crucial roles, their presence enabling these unions, ensuring the human race persisted despite moral complexity, unrecorded history, and the shadow of Cain's transgression. Life demanded courage, adaptation, and creativity, forcing early humans to reconcile fear, morality, and survival, understanding that choices often carried both blessings and consequences, shaping civilization before formal laws existed. Cain's household illustrates the delicate balance, nurturing life while navigating divine commands, ethical ambiguity, and survival's urgency, demonstrating that early humans faced impossible choices with profound emotional and spiritual consequences. Emotional tension ran high, each decision carrying potential guilt or blessing, teaching early humans resilience, foresight, and moral discernment in an environment where survival and morality often seemed at odds. These unions were fraught with fear, uncertainty, and hope, blending necessity with moral reflection, demonstrating that love and survival are sometimes inseparable, even when society, scripture, or conscience complicates choice. The first daughters understood responsibility, guiding relationships, preserving morality, and navigating social complexity, ensuring that the human race continued while teaching emotional intelligence, patience, and ethical reasoning in morally ambiguous circumstances. Intermarriage illustrates human adaptability, moral flexibility, and survival instinct, showing that continuity sometimes requires practical decisions beyond conventional morality, reflecting the tension between divine command, natural law, and human preservation. Fear of repeating Cain's sin weighed on early families, influencing unions, teaching accountability, self-restraint, and awareness of consequences, reminding humanity that moral awareness must accompany practical decisions to maintain divine favor. Despite moral ambiguity, life persisted, emphasizing resilience, ingenuity, and courage, illustrating that survival requires navigating complex social, ethical, and spiritual challenges while ensuring that humanity continues beyond tragedy or error. These unions, though unrecorded, form the foundation of early human civilization, illustrating the interplay of necessity, morality, and divine guidance in shaping families, communities, and cultural continuity. The daughters' participation ensured stability, ethical guidance, and emotional balance, their quiet influence preserving life and moral awareness while shaping early societal norms, survival strategies, and humanity's ethical framework. Every decision carried potential divine scrutiny, reinforcing the importance of reflection, restraint, and conscientious choice, showing that moral discernment and emotional intelligence were essential for sustaining life and civilization. The psychological weight of these unions was immense, blending fear, guilt, hope, and responsibility, forcing early humans to grow emotionally, spiritually, and socially to meet the demands of survival and ethical awareness. Even necessity did not remove moral tension, teaching early generations that choices must be weighed, consequences anticipated, and divine commands interpreted in light of survival, compassion, and familial responsibility. These hidden marriages carried lessons in patience, compromise, and moral balance, showing that human ingenuity, emotional intelligence, and ethical discernment are essential to navigate survival and divine expectation simultaneously. Conflict and tension arose naturally, as human desire, conscience, and practicality collided, illustrating that morality is rarely simple, and early civilization relied on quiet reflection, guidance, and the wisdom of unseen contributors. Fear of repeating mistakes fostered vigilance, careful guidance, and moral education within households, ensuring children understood the delicate balance between survival, obedience, and ethical conduct in early human society. The ethical dilemmas faced by Cain's family resonate today, showing that moral complexity has always accompanied human life and that survival, love, and continuity often require courage and wisdom beyond immediate understanding. Each union ensured humanity's continuation, highlighting that sometimes difficult, morally ambiguous decisions are necessary to preserve life, emphasizing responsibility, foresight, and ethical reflection in nascent civilization. These choices shaped the emotional and spiritual landscape, teaching that early humans developed resilience, discernment, and moral awareness through necessity, observation, and reflection, ensuring humanity endured amidst adversity. The first generations exemplify human complexity. Love, survival, morality, and divine expectation intertwined, teaching that ethical reflection, emotional awareness, and courage are necessary companions for civilization's foundation. Quiet reflection guided unions, ensuring that morality and survival coexisted, with daughters and women preserving ethical boundaries, nurturing life, and shaping civilization despite challenges, moral ambiguity, and divine scrutiny. Fear, hope, and necessity guided relationships, illustrating that morality often operates within tension, requiring emotional intelligence, patience, and careful observation to maintain both human continuity and spiritual alignment. These unions created early societies, demonstrating that human resilience, creativity, and moral reflection are essential for survival, balancing divine expectations with the realities of limited population, social bonds, and ethical responsibility. Lessons emerge for viewers. Survival demands courage, love, moral discernment, and partnership, even when choices challenge convention, intuition, or divine interpretation, showing that early humans navigated complexity with wisdom and patience. The daughters' hidden roles highlight the unseen influence of women in preserving life, teaching morality, and guiding early civilizations through emotionally and ethically complex situations essential for continuity and growth. Forbidden unions, though morally ambiguous, were instrumental in sustaining humanity, showing that ethical reflection, emotional resilience, and practical decisions often converge to ensure survival and civilization in the harshest circumstances. Ultimately, the story teaches viewers that morality, survival, and human continuity often coexist in tension, requiring courage, empathy, foresight, and resilience to navigate life's most difficult decisions responsibly and ethically. History's lessons are encoded in these early choices. Even in morally complex situations, love, wisdom, and practical necessity can coexist, preserving life, teaching ethics, and ensuring the endurance of humanity for generations. The tension between survival and sin reminds us that moral dilemmas are inherent to human experience, and that careful reflection, courage, and empathy are essential to balance obedience, survival, and ethical integrity. Thus, the first unions highlight human ingenuity, emotional depth, and moral responsibility, showing that survival, civilization, and ethical awareness often require navigating difficult choices, unseen sacrifices, and morally complex paths. Cain's descendants multiplied, spreading across lands east of Eden, bearing the weight of exile, moral ambiguity, and divine mark, shaping humanity through labor, creativity, and the shadow of ancestral guilt. Jabal, a forerunner of nomadic life, guided flocks and tents, teaching survival, adaptation, and ingenuity, illustrating that Cain's lineage contributed to civilization while carrying the burden of inherited consequences. Jubal introduced music and culture, shaping human expression and creativity, proving that even those marked by transgression could cultivate beauty, innovation, and moral lessons across generations. Tubal-Cain forged tools, teaching metallurgy, shaping early industry, blending practical skill with moral reflection, showing that human legacy carries both productivity and the echo of ancestral sins. The lineage was marked by labor and ingenuity, but shadows lingered. Envy, pride, and moral struggle remained, reminding descendants of Cain's choices and the ongoing tension between human desire and divine expectation. Guilt permeated their lives subtly, a quiet moral resonance transmitted across generations, influencing choices, relationships, and understanding of right and wrong in a world still forming civilization. The shadow of Cain's curse was complex. Divine protection ensured survival, yet moral tension persisted, teaching descendants vigilance, responsibility, and awareness of consequences intertwined with opportunity, creativity, and innovation. Each generation balanced labor, innovation, and morality, illustrating human struggle to create civilization while bearing the legacy of sin, guilt, and exile, showing the duality of potential and peril. Jobel's nomadic knowledge preserved survival techniques, fostering human expansion, illustrating that practical skills passed across generations coexist with moral and spiritual lessons rooted in ancestral experience. Jubel's musical legacy enriched culture, demonstrating that even those marked by curse can inspire beauty, emotion, and connection, showing that moral imperfection does not preclude influence or contribution. Tubal-Cain's tools empowered civilization, revealing that human ingenuity can transcend moral shadows, yet each innovation carried ethical responsibility, a reflection of the tension between creation, utility, and divine oversight. Redemption remained possible. Acts of compassion, innovation, and guidance allowed Cain's lineage to overcome shadowed beginnings, demonstrating that moral reflection and effort can shape destiny positively, despite inherited consequences. The struggle between inherited curse and human potential created tension, teaching that moral vigilance, emotional awareness, and ethical guidance are necessary to navigate legacy, innovation, and survival. Each descendant's life was a study in consequence, resilience, and moral choice, showing that human history is shaped not only by achievements, but by how individuals reconcile past failures with present responsibility. Cain's mark symbolized both divine protection and moral reminder, emphasizing that even flawed humans carry potential for creativity, influence, and moral growth when balanced with reflection, guidance, and vigilance. The lineage's story demonstrates continuity. Survival, adaptation, and civilization emerged alongside struggle, guilt, and moral challenge, illustrating that human history is complex, shaped by both transgression and effort toward redemption. Jubel, and Tubal-Cain represent the duality of human legacy. Innovation and culture flourish, yet moral struggle remains, teaching viewers that achievement cannot erase responsibility or the consequences of ancestry. The descendants' contributions ensured humanity's expansion, showing that even those carrying a curse can influence civilization profoundly, reminding us that legacy is both burden and opportunity. Moral lessons intertwined with daily life, survival, creativity, and reflection created a balance between ambition and responsibility, teaching descendants awareness of their actions' consequences and the need for ethical discernment. Cain's curse influenced worldview, decision-making, and relationships, emphasizing that inherited legacy shapes both opportunity and caution, forcing early humans to navigate tension between survival and ethical integrity. Redemption manifested through contributions to humanity. Skill, culture, and guidance allowed descendants to rise above shadowed beginnings, proving that human potential coexists with inherited imperfection. The lineage illustrates human adaptability. Moral reflection, innovation, and survival are inseparable, teaching viewers that ethical choices, creativity, and practical skills are essential in cultivating civilization. Cain's descendants demonstrate continuity amidst imperfection. Society thrives when individuals learn from ancestral mistakes, reconcile guilt, and channel resilience into action, ensuring survival, morality, and cultural growth. History is shaped by both darkness and light. Cain's lineage highlights human capacity for error and redemption, showing that struggle, creativity, and moral awareness coexist in building civilization. The descendants' achievements reveal that even marked individuals can contribute profoundly, teaching viewers that moral complexity does not preclude influence, growth, or the capacity to preserve humanity. guilt, and redemption coexist. Lessons of Cain's lineage resonate emotionally, emphasizing that struggle, reflection, and resilience shape both human character and society across generations, creating moral and practical continuity. Their story reminds viewers that human civilization is not only physical progress, but moral, emotional, and spiritual growth, emerging through reflection, correction, and the balance between inherited curse and personal responsibility. Ultimately, Cain's lineage teaches enduring lessons. Struggle shapes character. Legacy carries responsibility, and even in imperfection, humanity can cultivate civilization, morality, and resilience through careful reflection and ethical action. Through the descendants' experiences, viewers understand that human history involves tension between inherited flaws and potential, emphasizing the power of choice, reflection, and courage in shaping society, morality, and emotional legacy. The lineage of Cain is both caution and inspiration. Human struggle, guilt, resilience, and redemption converge, showing that survival, innovation, and ethical reflection remain inseparable in the human story. Even in shadow, contributions endure. Cain's descendants preserved life, shaped civilization, and illuminated moral complexity, teaching viewers that legacy combines responsibility, innovation, and emotional awareness, creating the foundation for human continuity. Thus, the lineage of Cain embodies human duality, burdened by curse, yet capable of creativity, redemption, and civilization, proving that struggle, moral reflection, and perseverance define both individual and collective human destiny. The daughters of Adam and Eve moved quietly through early civilization, unseen architects of survival. Their labor, wisdom, and emotional resilience silently shaping families, communities, and the moral framework of humanity. They carried burdens invisible to history, preserving knowledge, ethical awareness, and practical skills necessary for survival, embodying patience and strength while navigating emotional complexity, familial tension, and the aftermath of humanity's first transgression. Their lives were marked by observation, understanding the consequences of Cain's exile, Abel's death, and the delicate balance between obedience, survival, and moral responsibility in early generations struggling to endure. They managed households, nurtured children, and guided siblings, ensuring knowledge, morality, and survival persisted, demonstrating that even in obscurity, their actions influenced the foundation of human civilization. The daughters' emotional resilience grew from fear, loss, and responsibility, transforming quiet suffering into strength, patience, and wisdom that would shape human behavior, family cohesion, and community survival for generations. Their labor extended beyond survival, cultivating food, managing resources, and maintaining domestic stability, while simultaneously preserving ethical lessons and emotional intelligence critical for early human society's endurance and continuity. They observed human folly and virtue, witnessing jealousy, violence, compassion, and love, learning early lessons in moral reflection that would guide their own actions and influence siblings and descendants alike. Fear often shadowed them, yet resilience defined their response, teaching that emotional intelligence, courage, and thoughtful action are essential for survival in morally complex and unpredictable circumstances. Loss was constant. Siblings exiled, family fractured, and innocence destroyed. Yet daughters persevered, cultivating hope, guiding continuity, and quietly influencing early human growth beyond the reach of history or scripture. Their heroism was silent, unnoticed by descendants, yet pivotal, teaching morality, guiding survival, and ensuring the fragile continuity of humanity amidst chaos, exile, and divine scrutiny. They forged alliances with siblings, coordinated household labor, and balanced competing needs, demonstrating strategic thinking, emotional awareness, and moral guidance critical to early societal cohesion. The daughters' roles illustrate the power of unseen influence, showing that morality, survival, and societal growth often rely on quiet, patient, and resilient contributors hidden from history's spotlight. Emotional depth defined their existence. Grief, fear, hope, and empathy interwove daily life, creating strength of character that allowed them to navigate challenges, preserve continuity, and support moral development in siblings. They observed Cain's descendants, noting achievements and transgressions, teaching lessons in vigilance, ethical discernment, and the consequences of inherited legacy, ensuring that human experience informed choices and cultivated responsibility. Secret lives emerged. Moments of solitude, reflection, and emotional processing enabled them to navigate fear, grief, and hope, providing a foundation for resilience, moral awareness, and long-term family guidance. Unexplored relationships shaped society subtly, guiding siblings, influencing marriages, and mentoring children, creating networks of support, morality, and survival knowledge that reinforced early human civilization's fragile structure. They maintained knowledge of survival, cultivation, and domestic stability, preserving essential skills for the next generation, demonstrating that practical expertise and emotional guidance are inseparable in sustaining human communities. Loss and tragedy instilled empathy. Observing consequences of envy, violence, and exile taught daughters the importance of patience, guidance, and moral reflection, influencing interactions, decisions, and the upbringing of younger siblings. Their resilience became a template for ethical behavior, demonstrating that quiet endurance, emotional intelligence, and careful observation can cultivate morality, preserve life, and sustain communities even under extreme hardship. Through labor and observation, they influenced family growth, survival strategies, and early moral education, shaping civilization without recognition, proving that contribution is not defined by visibility but by impact. Secret acts of compassion, instruction, and guidance strengthened communities, allowing early humans to thrive despite limited population, moral ambiguity, and societal instability, highlighting the critical role of unseen moral actors. The daughters' influence extended to emotional literacy, teaching patience, empathy, and reflection, ensuring that siblings and descendants understood human complexity, moral responsibility, and the importance of balanced decision-making. They navigated social dynamics with foresight, observing sibling relationships, marriages, and labor contributions, mediating conflicts, and ensuring moral and practical stability across households and extended family networks. Emotional endurance allowed them to process grief and fear, transforming vulnerability into strength, patience, and practical action, shaping early civilization's foundation through both visible and hidden contributions. Their lives illustrate that moral guidance often arises from quiet observation, reflection, and intervention, teaching that civilization depends not only on achievement, but also on the patience, wisdom, and resilience of caregivers. Historical silence does not negate impact. Their unseen contributions preserved life, morality, and culture, demonstrating that early human survival relied heavily on emotional intelligence, ethical guidance, and resilience passed down through generations. The daughters' secret acts of mentorship, labor, and moral instruction ensured survival, continuity, and ethical grounding, showing that history's hidden figures often wield influence more profound than recognized achievements or public acknowledgement. They navigated secrecy and societal expectations, blending obedience with practical action, demonstrating that early humans balanced divine instruction, family duty, and survival with subtlety, patience, and emotional intelligence. Lessons emerge. Strength, resilience, and ethical influence often operate quietly, shaping society and civilization from the shadows, emphasizing that unseen contributions are foundational to human survival and moral development. Their hidden heroism reveals that survival is intertwined with ethical reflection, patience, and guidance, showing viewers that quiet, unnoticed actions can carry profound emotional, moral, and practical significance. They bore witness to the first violence, exile, and moral complexity, converting fear into wisdom and loss into purpose, ensuring that humanity learned from early mistakes while cultivating resilience and ethical awareness. The mysterious lives of Eve's daughters highlight that history's overlooked figures often carry civilization forward, combining emotional depth, moral guidance, and practical skills to preserve survival and teach enduring lessons. Ultimately, their story teaches viewers that resilience, silent heroism, and emotional intelligence are as critical as visibility, innovation, or power in shaping human civilization, morality, and the continuity of life. Through reflection, labor, and quiet influence, Eve's daughters ensured humanity's continuity, demonstrating that hidden contributions, patience, and moral guidance form the foundation of civilization, even when unrecognized and absent from Scripture. Thus, the forgotten daughters serve as timeless examples. Quiet strength, emotional depth, and moral foresight can shape societies, preserve life, and cultivate humanity despite tragedy, loss, and the weight of ancestral consequences. Cain's wife remains shrouded in mystery, a figure mentioned but unnamed, leaving generations to wonder how humanity continued after the first exile and the first act of fratricide. Scholars and theologians have speculated, sister, niece, or distant relative, yet evidence is scarce, emphasizing humanity's struggle to reconcile scripture, morality, and the practical necessity of survival in early history. The daughters of Adam and Eve provide plausible answers, their existence bridging the gap between divine command and human continuity, suggesting survival often required difficult, morally ambiguous choices. Some propose that unions among siblings were necessary to preserve humanity, highlighting tension between divine instruction and practical reality, showing early humans faced ethical dilemmas with no easy solutions. Cain's exile amplifies the question, where could he find companionship? The necessity of marriage for survival creates moral and emotional complexity, teaching viewers about human responsibility amidst divine judgment. Emotional struggle defines the narrative. Cain, burdened by guilt and fear, searches for connection, illustrating that exile carries isolation, moral reflection, and the challenge of sustaining life under divine scrutiny. The daughter's perspective offers insight. Silent observers of history, caretakers of morality, and custodians of survival, enabling continuity despite ethical tension, danger, and the shadow of humanity's first sin. Some traditions suggest Cain married a niece, blending familial continuity with divine purpose, teaching that morality often requires nuanced understanding when survival, lineage, and divine mandate intersect. Speculation extends to the emotional. Cain's loneliness, longing, and guilt shape the human condition, revealing that moral mistakes carry emotional weight that transcends generations, influencing actions and choices. His wife's identity remains hidden, emphasizing the limits of historical knowledge, yet her presence symbolizes survival, moral ambiguity, and humanity's ability to persevere despite exile, fear, and ancestral sin. The narrative invites reflection. Humanity's earliest choices were complex, ethically challenging, and essential, demonstrating that survival often demands courage, discernment, and moral flexibility when guidance is unclear. Cain's descendants further complicate the story. Their existence proves continuity, suggesting unions with forgotten daughters or extended family, showing that survival, morality, and divine will often intersect in hidden ways. The story reflects human resilience. Even marked by curse, Cain found partnership, illustrating that companionship, love, and practical decision-making are essential for survival and moral continuity in early civilizations. Moral reflection is central. Viewers see that choices made under duress carry consequences, yet necessity and survival can create ethically complex paths requiring careful discernment and emotional intelligence. The mystery of Cain's wife underscores human curiosity, imagination, and need for closure, reminding viewers that some historical truths remain elusive, teaching humility and reflection in the face of uncertainty. Her anonymity allows focus on broader lessons: survival, continuity, morality, and emotional resilience, showing that sometimes unseen figures influence history more profoundly than named characters or recorded deeds. Theories converge yet remain inconclusive, illustrating that some mysteries serve as moral and emotional mirrors, reflecting humanity's struggle with sin, consequence, and the burden of survival across generations. Reflection on Cain's wife invites empathy. She represents the human capacity for patience, courage, and moral navigation under complex circumstances, teaching that unseen contributions sustain both life and ethical continuity. The story highlights emotional tension. Guilt, fear, love, and responsibility intertwine, revealing that early humans balanced moral imperatives with practical needs, shaping civilization through unseen actions and choices. Human imagination fills gaps. Legends, speculation, and reflection create narrative meaning, showing that even absent knowledge can teach ethical reasoning, resilience, and emotional understanding through historical reconstruction. Her role symbolizes ethical compromise, moral tension between divine instruction and survival necessity, demonstrates that human choice is rarely simple, emphasizing the need for discernment, courage, and reflection. Cain's wife teaches humility. History is incomplete. Mysteries persist, yet life endures, morality evolves, and humanity navigates choices shaped by circumstance, fear, and divine observation across generations. The daughter's existence contextualizes her presence. Survival often required unions among family, demonstrating that moral complexity, ethical reflection, and pragmatic decision-making coexist in the human story from the beginning. Emotional resonance emerges. Fear of divine wrath, responsibility for life, and the weight of ancestral sin create psychological depth, illustrating the human struggle to reconcile morality with survival imperatives. Speculation fosters contemplation. Viewers reflect on identity, legacy, and ethical decision-making, understanding that some truths remain hidden, yet lessons in morality, courage, and resilience endure across generations. Her story highlights resilience and agency, unseen, unnamed, yet crucial, demonstrating that human survival often depends on quiet, morally aware individuals navigating ethically complex and emotionally challenging circumstances. The unresolved nature reinforces tension. Viewers confront the unknown, recognizing that moral reflection, courage, and ethical discernment remain necessary even when answers are incomplete or history is silent. Cain's wife embodies continuity. Through her, humanity survived, moral lessons persisted, and civilization expanded, showing that even hidden figures carry profound responsibility and influence across generations. The emotional closure lies not in certainty, but reflection. Humanity navigates sin, survival, and consequence, learning that uncertainty invites moral growth, patience, and humility, revealing the ethical complexity of early life. The narrative bridges history and philosophy. Unseen contributions, moral struggle, and survival intersect, teaching that human legacy is shaped as much by quiet decision-making as by documented action or fame. Ultimately, Cain's wife represents the enduring human challenge, reconciling morality with survival, guilt with responsibility, and fear with love, showing that ethical reflection is central to both personal and collective destiny. Her story invites viewers to meditate on human experience. Mystery, moral tension, resilience, and survival intertwine, illustrating that the unknown can teach lessons as profound as recorded history or revealed truth. The final reflection emphasizes balance. Curiosity, ethical reflection, and emotional intelligence guide humanity through uncertainty, mystery, and survival, demonstrating that moral courage shapes both character and civilization. In this unresolved mystery, viewers see hope. Despite uncertainty, life endures, morality evolves, and human resilience ensures continuity, proving that even in hidden acts and nameless figures, humanity thrives. If this moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. That's the only way you can help us. Keep telling the truth that saves.